Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Wrestling Chat with Friends, and tonight we're going to be discussing openly the life, the legacy, the man that was the outsider himself, Scott Hall. Obviously, may he rest in peace. We got the news earlier this week, in which is a has to be considered one of the most brutal 5 days, 8 days, like a brutal span for the WWE. And also, as we go further, we obviously wish a speedy recovery to Big E. I like to call him our champion. This Big E definitely repped the way that we like to see an African American, Black American rep in the WWE. Big E had done it all, and what some would call an amazing rise to the title, but maybe the title reign was a little bit underwhelming at the time. But Big E has been a pillar since he has been in WWE, signed a contract, and he has been awesome. So we want to wish him a speedy recovery. I am being joined on a special night by a very special partner. Look, we had the going away show, and of course he never went anywhere, but he is back tonight because we love him. Ty, what is the gimmick today, brother?
Gimmick is going to be X Pac Heat.
X Pac Heat. Ty
Yes.
X Pac Heat. Please explain.
X Pac Heat is basically people hate you for the wrong reasons. They just want you to go away, but you keep coming back over and over and over and over again.
I like it. I like it. Ty X Pac Heat is ready to bring some thunder here to talk about the life and legacy of Scott Hall. And also joining us, and this is the first time they're on the show together, but a good friend of the show, a regular, if I will dare I say regular, the homie Elliot. Elliot, how are you feeling this week?
I'm feeling good, Cheats. Thanks for having me on. Ty, welcome back.
Man, we got a lot to get into, but we are going to adjust the entire show. The entire show is going to be adjusted for the outsider himself, Scott Hall. So I'm going to start. I'm going to start with our normal segment, but a little bit of a spin to it. Our normal segment is always, what are we popping for this week? But I'm going to change it, take the liberty to change it to say, what Scott what about Scott Hall? What about Scott Hall, or what moment of his career that spanned obviously through WWE, WCW, all over the place? What was the moment Scott Hall made you pop the most?
I'll
Hmm.
start. I'll go ahead and start. It has to be the very first match I ever saw him in. Is what I think it was 3 matches in a row with 1, 2, 3 Kid Sean Waltman himself. That was the very first time I ever watched, I think, a wrestling show at that point. And the first match was, yeah, Razor Ramon. This dude that's clearly not Puerto Rican.
I
Acting like
love that. I love that.
Christ. I mean, it was it a technician to the finest. I mean, he was a great wrestler in there with the even like probably one of the most unsung wrestlers of all time. And the 1, 2, 3 Kid, Sean Waltman, who I did not know this was what, like 18, like 19 in the ring with him.
Hmm.
Super young.
And yeah. First time I saw the Razor's Edge, everything, man. Everything about the presentation of that was just that's what got me in. That's what got me in.
How about
I
you, Elliot?
I had been aware of Scott Hall for many years by way of some old Pro Wrestling Illustrateds that I was looking at in 87, 88. Heard about him coming through the AWA ranks. Knew of him as Razor Ramon, but the moment that I remember that sticks out for me, probably because of how old I was at the time, what I was really into WCW, watching those Nitros, and when he strolled up in the denim on denim at the desk in front of Bobby Heenan and Eric Bischoff and whoever was the third, if there was a third man. When he sort of came to the back behind them, a guy who, if you knew anything, you knew he was Razor Ramon. What was going on? Why is he there? This is what kayfabe was still not, it was still a thing then. And seeing him invade that show followed around the same time, I guess, with Kevin Nash at the same time as the Outsiders. That gave me goosebumps almost knowing that a fourth wall had been broken and something new and something we had never seen before, not a cross promotion, but guys who were popular showing up on another show, making it, giving this extra element of real. Seeing Scott Hall walk onto Nitro for the first time popped me the most.
I'm gonna piggyback on that because that has to be the moment for me. I like Ty said, I was a Razor Ramon fan. Like I understood where Razor Ramon was in the kind of the WWE pantheon or the pecking order, if you will. And it was one of those moments where when he showed up, not doing anything in WCW, and he's sitting in the audience, and that's it. That's it. He's sitting in the audience. And at the time, kayfabe was so real. Kayfabe was so real that it was like, when you're young and you see your school teacher at the grocery store, and you're like, wait a second, my school teacher isn't supposed to be at the grocery store, or heaven forbid at a restaurant with her husband drinking, or vice versa with the wife drinking. You're like, these people aren't real. They're not supposed to be outside of the setting, right, that they're supposed to be in. If you're a school teacher, you're sitting in school. You're not supposed to have a life, right? When Scott Hall was sitting in the audience of WCW, it was like, what is he doing here? What is happening? And we didn't really understand, and this is why kayfabe is great. We didn't fully understand that by him just being there and in the front row and then putting the camera on him it's already done deal. He's already signed. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's the whole invasion thing was just done so well. And the NWO ultimately was done so well. And the Wolfpack was actually done really well. But we just don't get those type of moments anymore. And the fact that the other thing that really was amazing was because we didn't know anything about quote unquote Scott Hall. We only knew Razor Ramon. So when Scott Hall doesn't have the right to use the name Razor Ramon, he has to get in the ring with Kevin Nash, who can't use Diesel either, and he does it perfectly. He does the "Hey yo," he's got the toothpick, and he just says for like weeks, "You know me," and that's it. Like, he doesn't say his name. It wasn't immediately Scott Hall. It was a "You know me," and everybody knew him, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. We are going to hold 1 second. I'm going to bring in a homie because this is an open tribute to Scott Hall. We're bringing in a homie.
Oh.
My man Jay, Justin, illustrious hip-hop writer, PR specialist, but also big-time wrestling fan and a big-time Scott Hall fan. Jay, let me, what we're doing right now is we're going around and telling what was the biggest moment for you in the career of Scott Hall. Do you got one?
Shoot, man, I would honestly say that it's two of them. So everyone wants to talk about the initial ladder match from WrestleMania 10, but I felt like the rematch between Razor and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 95, that was a really great ladder match as well. And based on his character, that really sold the importance of the ladder match, along with this other thing that we don't really consider, the fact that there were just two ladders in the rematch compared to the first one where it was that one ladder. So it was the importance of, okay, like we only have one ladder for this match. So there's a greater significance of the two individuals having their own ladders in that matchup. So Sean and Razor, they had their own great chemistry within being the pioneers of that match. And the second one would honestly be when him and Kevin Nash first went into WCW. And the story behind that of how Nash and Hall couldn't go by Razor Ramon and Diesel because those two names were like copyrighted by WWE. So they couldn't use that in any other way, but they could go as themselves. And they still carried those like respective personas together. And that at the time was breaking the forbidden door that we as wrestling fans talk about time and time and time again. So that was such an epic moment within the battle of the Monday Night War between WWF and WCW.
Perfect. Well said, Jay. Well said. Ty, let me ask you, because I want to bring you in as somebody that has followed the career of Scott Hall and the actual matches. But I want to, before I talk about the matches, we're going to talk about some of the matches. Um, I think the overall theme I'm hearing, especially since he's passed and the news, is just this overall coolness that Scott Hall had from whatever promotion he was in, from whatever kind of gimmick character he had. It was this coolness that I think particularly appealed to minorities, whether it was Latinos or African Americans. What was it about Razor Ramon and then Scott Hall that just made him, because he's a gimmick, and there's a lot of gimmicks that did not go well in Latino or black communities, but Razor Ramon just seemed to be that cat. Why do you think his persona registered so well? Obviously with everyone, but in particular with minorities as well.
I would say that it's because it was a total package. It was a total package. You got this dude that with the slick back hair and everything else like that, with the gold chains everywhere, just with a toothpick in his mouth, doing his his vignettes in the hood. Really, like his vignettes were in the hood, and him just going around. I don't know. It was just something about him that just screamed out cool. It just he just had it, and probably because it was Scarface. It was just Scarface all over again, and I don't
Elliot,
know.
I see you shaking your head. What was it about Scott Hall's personality, persona, charisma that made him endeared to, I want to say, a lot of Latinos, a lot of minorities? He was endeared everywhere, but it just seemed like Razor Ramon. There was a lot of that's our guy.
I can only speak for my culture, but I think Ty nailed it. Tony Montana, Scarface. That is a hero in lots of cultures, Latino and Black as well. It's that machismo that you really became attracted to him. He did not care. He knew he was the best, just like Tony did. The world is mine. So I think that was the reason. It was just a Scarface connection. Ty nailed it.
Yeah, I
Jay,
mean,
what do you think?
he looked like
Oh,
he
go
had
ahead,
Oh
Ty.
man,
more
so
grit.
I was actually pondering back to past vignettes that used to be on a show called WWF Superstars, if anybody remembers that.
Oh yeah,
And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there was one where he was walking in like a all white suit with the gold chains, and he's like,
Indeed,
what is an
indeed.
education? I don't need that because look at me. Like I have the clothes, I have the style, I have the money. Like, and just other vignettes to where he was reflecting on old men playing Dynamos or Los Viejos, if you will. And he's like, man, like they are just wasting their time. While me, I don't waste time. Like I'm going to the top and all of my competition will fall like dynamos. And yeah, like the way that he kept it simple, but yet made it very effective rather than just drawn out promos that we've seen. Like he knew how to capture an audience quickly. And I remember actually retweeting some like tweet the day of his passing from this former lead writer for NXT and SmackDown that actually worked with Scott Hall for his Hall of Fame speech in 2014. And Hall stated to the writer, like, look, I did a lot of research on the past Hall of Fame speeches. One thing I found in common, they're way too long. So his speech was really only 4.5 minutes total compared to like the 10 or 15 that we've seen from past Hall of Fame alumni. But watching that back, he knew like how to capitalize. He knew how to hold on before saying something else so that way the audience can let what he said marinate. Like he was a great presenter, a great speaker. Like he knew how to play with the crowd well with what he said and how he said it.
And I think what we're all alluding to and talking about a little bit, that really, the thing about kayfabe and the thing about wrestling and the thing about characters is the more you embrace the character and the more it becomes and feels and seems authentic to the type of person you are, what interestingly enough happens is you start to work this character, and then actuality you either live the gimmick or you don't, right? Like it just becomes a part of you. And the interesting thing about Scott Hall, whether it was Razor Ramon or Scott Hall, and we'll talk about it as we move through the show, there's probably some differences there, but he had gotten to the point where we believed him. It was very authentic, even though it was this like we said, it's this like amazing Tony Montana style character for someone that doesn't have the heritage, but it's just like, hey, you're big, you have dark hair, you know what I mean? Let's make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And and it was like we believed him. And when he did those, like Ty mentioned, when he did those vignettes and the inner city, or he's in a Latino community where people are playing dominoes, or if he's in the all white suit, it was like we knew he was cool. But then you add that character to him and you start to believe it, and he plays it out so well. He executed so well to the point where is anybody like focused on that man's ring walk? When he walks to the ring, it's iconic before he even does anything. And so I think that level of authenticity and that blurred line, and again, even in 2022, we live in a different world when it comes to professional wrestling. We live in a world where we understand, lack of a better term, sports entertainment. We understand that when we catch a professional, no matter who it is, we could catch Roman Reigns in a diner on a random Wednesday, and he could be the biggest heel in the business, the tribal chief. We're going to walk up to him, and he's going to be probably nice to kids, right? Mm-hmm. At the time, Razor Ramon is Razor Ramon. At the time, Scott Hall is the bad guy. You're not doing that. You're not taking your kids up and being like, "Hey, Razor Ramon, my kid loves you." He's gonna put a toothpick in your face, and and we wanted him to, and it's just so awesome. I'm bringing in our homie Ty. We got another homie. I think we can bring in. His video is not on, so I don't know if we're gonna bring him in until his video gets up. I see our homie Mo. There he is.
It's all right. It's all right, man. Like it's a lot going on right now, so that's the camera on.
We got our homie. We got our homie Mo.
Any dinner yet? So but I'll be on it until the food is done, though.
Mo from No Words Barred on the Family Podcast Network. We love what his show is doing. Mo, look, because your time is limited, tell us, we were just kind of reflecting on what was the biggest moment for you and the legacy of Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. What was the biggest moment for you when you think of his career?
I mean, he had a lot of big moments, but the one thing for sure, I know for me that was as a kid that was like mind blowing is that when he first came on Nitro and interrupted the match that was going on. I mean, at that time, like, and I caught the end of what you were just talking about, with kayfabe. At that time, like there was internet was just starting, but there was no dirt sheets like that. I mean, unless you just happen to know where to find whatever that type of information. But for a kid like me, I was like, what is he doing on a WCW show? I had no idea anything about contracts running out or anything like that. It was just him being on there, and it blew my mind. Like half of I was confused but excited, but like, all right, what's going on? I legit thought it was like an invasion thing, in the back of my mind. But just that whole progress of when he first came on there, leading up to the Bash at the Beach match, and for me, that was a big thing for me. Now, if as far as his WWF days, I didn't catch. He's one of the few wrestlers that I never was able to see live. When I was living in New York, because I mean MSG has, I mean that's the headquarters for WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I never really got the chance to see him live, but I did catch a lot of his matches because there was a time period where I had stopped watching wrestling, like 2 or 3 years. I really got back into it like in late '95, and at that time, like, I mean, I really didn't know anything about Razor Ramon or anything like that. I was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? I don't know, like, that's all I asked. Like, who is this guy? Because he caught my attention, like with the accent and the look and the chains, and just he was just cool. Like the guy was just cool to look at, and just to see, hear him talk, and see his matches. He wasn't a flashy guy. He was a more methodical type of wrestler. But that Razor's Edge was beautiful. It was a beautiful finisher. For me, I'm like, I'm looking at him like, how is he able to lift that guy up in that position? Like, how? So for me, it's just, there's just so many memories, so many good things about him. But the one thing I will point out that my favorite part is when he started doing the AO. Like once he started doing that, and seeing that the first time he did that, the crowd didn't really react to it, but seeing how it gradually built up over time, that all he has to say, like the crowd was just waiting for him to say it. No matter what other members of the NWO was doing, once the mic got to Scott Hall's hands, everybody was just like with a gasp, like they were just waiting for him to say "Ayo." And then once he did it, it's like, I mean, they just went absolutely nuts, So it's just so much of a great the charismatic nature of him. I loved it, and I'm gonna miss it. And like everybody felt the same way about it. So that's my personal memories with Scott Hall that I'm always gonna hold near and dear to the heart for sure.
That's that's indeed. All right, I know Ty and Jay both have to drop off in a little bit, so we'll go in order. Jay, give me your. We'll go in order. Jay, give me your final closing thoughts on Razor Ramon, aka Scott Hall, and then we'll just jump right into Ty because I know we're all on time constraints, and I know Mo, you do the same because I know you got time restraints as well, brother. But man, this is great, man. I appreciate all of you coming on to talk about the bad guy.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely,
my
man.
final thought would really be that Scott Hall was one of the best wrestling personalities in his era, and even in a rough time for WWF too, where they was lacking a sense of star power in that mid 90s before the starting of the Monday Night War. Like he was one of those bright lights in a dark era of WWE. So that I'm forever grateful to see. He had a better TNA run than what I thought he did, honestly, where most people forget that he was on TNA for a short bit. But
Right.
but he had a better run than what most people would think for his age after his WWE run. That's all I'll say. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Y'all
Man, we
have a good one,
appreciate
okay?
you, brother. Wrestling Chat with Friends. Jay, you got to come back on, man. We appreciate
Yeah.
you, man.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. See you soon.
So, look, Ty, I want to do something, and I don't know if we have time because I know you got a jet, Ty. But do we have time to do Rate the Wrestler, Scott Hall?
Oh man, of course we do.
Okay, we got time. We're gonna go fast. Mo, you're in on this?
Now I'm in. I'm in.
All right. So we're doing our standard Rate the Wrestler. This is going to be our Scott Hall edition, and it's going to be obviously we're paying a lot of respects. We're going to try to be as fair as possible. It is the 5 belt model, modeled after the 5 mics of our source magazine, the Hip Hop Bible. So you can go 5 is the highest. You can go 0.5s. You can't go any other deviations. And we're going to go mic work, ring work, star factor. And this is what we're rating for Scott Hall, a.k.a. the bad guy. We will start on the mic, even because we know we've talked about this ad nauseum. Ty, 5 belts, Scott Hall on the mic. What do you rate him?
5 belts on the mic. I mean, Scott Hall had that ability to catch you with just those 2 words. That hey yo, it was slow, it was methodical, but you listened to everything he had to say. His Hall of Fame speech was even better. Like he had one of the better Hall of Fame speeches that I can remember. Yeah, mic work is just a straight up 5 for him, and that's no cap. That's no cap for me.
Yeah, if you got to be as objective as possible,
Right.
then who would be 5s in this industry? Well, there's a bunch of them, but not too many. Scott Hall checks off all the marks. I feel, who else are you going to give a 5 to if you're not going to give it to someone like Scott Hall? So yeah, total 5.
Mo, 5 mics, 5 belts.
Oh, 5. He gets a 5. It's like what I said before. I mean, it's the fact that he could say so little, but yet captivate so much attention towards him. And even when I look back and I see the old YouTube clips of his introduction to his vignettes that they showed, I would imagine at that time, like that seeing that it would be enough to garner my interest in what he was saying. And once he started actually talking, like that's he caught me. He got my attention every single time. So he gets 5, no doubt.
So here's the deal: The Rock's a 5, Flair's a 5, like Dusty Rhodes 5,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Jericho. Would you give him a 5?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jericho 5.
interesting. Okay.
Okay.
But we say The Rock, we say Flair, Dusty Rhodes is a 5. Stone Cold,
Jake the Snake Roberts.
Stone Cold's a 5.
Jake Roberts, yeah.
Jake the Snake Roberts. I say the only question I have is Scott Hall in the Flair Rock level? He's an A. We know it's an A. He's an A plus. Is he in the stratosphere? I'm still gonna give him a 5, but I just don't know if he's in the stratosphere of the greatest talkers of all time.
He is only because that when the NWO was first coming along, before Hogan, when the Outsiders and everything else like that, he was the mouthpiece.
He was the mouthpiece. It was not Kevin Nash.
The whole outfit,
Right.
And if he had more championships, more accolades, yes, we would put him in that same thing, in that same realm. We're putting these people in that realm because they have multiple championships.
Yeah.
Take away the championships, we're talking about just straight charisma, straight mic work. That's Razor.
We're gonna give him a 5. 5s across the board. This is where it gets difficult. In ring work. Let's start with Elliot. In ring work for Scott Hall. 5 belts. What do you give him?
I started going to YouTube after the day he passed away. I have seen a ton of him on Nitro. I have seen a ton of him in Razor Ramon. I hadn't seen a lot of TNA, so I watched a couple of TNA matches. But what I did was I tried to find some old AWA matches. He was a bodybuilder when he came in. He was huge. He paired with Kurt Hennig. He came around the same time as Chris Adams. Those guys like kind of mid-late 80s. Those first few years, he was technically a fantastic wrestler. It carried him definitely the latter matches, which show how proficient he was in the ring. His WCW run, he became more of sort of like the brooding guy, but he didn't just make it on charisma alone. He had a move set that was damn impressive. So I'm giving him a 4.
Okay.
I don't think he deserves any less, but I can name off the top of my head lots of wrestlers who I would say were even more technical. So, but 4 is nothing to sneeze at. He's a 4.
No, nothing to sneeze at all. Nothing at all. Mo, what do you got? Razor Ramon in ring work.
I could agree with a 4, and when I was hearing Elliot speak, I was just thinking, when you think about the Intercontinental Championship, that is normally known as the workman's title.
Yes.
Within the WWE and F whatever, and you don't get that title, at least how it always has been presented and built up as like. It's not only just the title that you get to step up, before you get to world, title. But when you really think about the historical context of that championship belt, that is you got that belt because you have some type of a technical ability, prowess that you have to keep up with the attention of the people within the matches itself. And of course, you look at. Everybody points out with his matches with Shawn Michaels, Shawn Michaels. And we all know, we hear about Shawn Michaels, how a lot of times he pulls, he's normally the person that's directing the match. He's the main person that's leading. But you can clearly see because, and then also they were so close friends, him and Razor, like they just brought out the best of one another. And if you look at also the last feud that he had, I remember, before he went to WCW, he had, I think, with 1-2-3 Kid. And they didn't have any bad, like, those another guys, close friends, brought out the best in each other. And if you look about his Intercontinental Championship reign, and even after that, like, he was a steady worksman. And given that his size and that he was, he had the build of a world champion, at that time, he was the prototypical big muscle-bound guy that could have been a world champion, but he was very agile for his size. And like I said, the 4, I think I'm comfortable with giving him a 4 or 5. That would be a little bit, I don't know, like that kind of maybe a little bit of a stretch. And I suppose some people could make arguments about it, but 4 I'm fine with. But like I said, I always look to him having that title and what it meant to have that championship and being those type of matches and the significance and meaning with that. That's enough for me to give him a 4.
I like it. Let's go to Ty.
All right. So with Razor, with Scott Hall, you have to measure his wrestling with the wrestling of the time.
Absolutely.
You can't say wrestling right now. The wrestling right now is way different. Unless you put in like the Randy Ortons and stuff, he's basically what Randy Orton is now. Not a big old thrills kind of guy. He's going to work. I don't remember many matches I've seen of him that he's worked face. Like not a lot of matches he's worked face. And as a heel, you already know that he's the one that carries a heel usually carries the matches. The heel's usually the general in the ring, saying what spots to do to get the most heat, all that other kind of stuff. And Razor had a genius intellect when it came to like in-ring work, like how to make a match work, inside and outside of it. Saying that, you have to do it at the time that he was wrestling, and he wrestled in TNA, and it was bad. He was older, and those demons were still, with him at that time, but he still wrestled. So I can't give him a 4. I can give him a 3. I'm gonna give him a 3.5.
Ooh, Ty
That's fine.
going with the 3.5. So I'm gonna go. I see both scenarios here, and I'm not even counting the TNA stuff. Because the classic Scott Hall matches, I do think of Razor Ramon. I think of WrestleMania 10, Shawn Michaels. I think of a lot of the WWF, WWE kind of feuds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I had to actually kind of go back and say, okay, there was a lot of big Scott Hall moments in WCW, but I was like, what are the matches? And the matches were Bash of the Beach. It was like the Outsiders and Hogan. There was a couple other WCW matches. There's a NWO versus like Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, Ric Flair's like Fall Brawl '96 on this list that I saw. But most of the matches,
Sting.
Right, Sting, yeah. Most of the matches were Razor Ramon matches. They weren't Scott Hall matches. And so I can go either way because I do think you're 100% correct about him becoming this fluid wrestler. Like, he was actually a very good, very fluid wrestler. And we'll talk about the finish after we could talk about the finish now and talk about the finish in the next segment. But the Razor's Edge is an amazing finish. Like, it's just an amazing, amazing finish. I'm gonna go with Ty, give him the 3.5. Though I do think he had some really, really good matches. I don't know if he had enough of them to go with 4. He's had a lot of bad matches too.
Actually,
So, what are you gonna do, Ty?
I just remember something. I'm changing mine to a 4.
You're going up to a 4.
You know why? He had a great match with Goldberg. He got a Goldberg match over.
Right.
Okay?
All right. If you're going 4, I'm gonna go 4 too. I was gonna go down. I could go either way, but I was going down because of, if you're looking at the entire body of work, he wrestled for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then the classic matches that you pull out, you get to about number 5, and you're like, the rest of them are probably not classics, right? But I'm with you. I'll go with 4. So now this is what we got, gentlemen. So far, he's got a clean slate, perfect score, NBA dunk competition. What is it? 50s across the board for mic work. He's got across the board 4s for in ring work. This next category is going to be a no-brainer. Scott Hall, It Factor, Charisma. Let's start with Mo. It Factor, Charisma, out of 5 belts.
I mean, in fact, the charisma. I mean, I'm personally giving him 5. I'm giving him a 5. I'm giving him 5. Like, it's.
This is gonna be the easiest one we have.
Yeah,
Elliot, It Factor, Charisma.
I'm prepared to do the same, but cheats. I'm thinking back to what you immediately said in the previous question when you were trying to figure out how thick that stratosphere is from Rick and The Rock to whoever else is in that stratosphere. I think Scott Hall's in that stratosphere.
He's there.
If that stratosphere though is a range, he's maybe right there in the middle. Maybe he's a little above the middle. Maybe, I'm going to go with a 4.5 just because, kind of like you summarized earlier, he's not The Rock. He's not Ric Flair. He's not Stone Cold Steve Austin, but those are his contemporaries. He held his own against all those guys. He's remembered by wrestling fans as well known as those guys. Yeah, he was.
But he's not those guys.
But he's not those guys. He's a 4.5. He's an icon. He's for everything outside his wrestling world too, which made him even more endearing and important to the business. Yeah, 4.5.
All right. I'm gonna let Ty go at the end of this one, so because I actually agree 100% with Elliot, and Elliot articulated better than I could ever have done, simply because he's like what Mo was saying about the Intercontinental Championship, and he made that Intercontinental Championship matter. Razor Ramon did. But the interesting thing is, he was always, to me, in that glorified sidekick type role, even with the outsiders. Kevin Nash was Scott Hall might have been the mouthpiece, but Kevin, when it turned into the person that was going to fight Goldberg at Starrcade, it was Kevin Nash. Scott Hall was the guy that hit him with the cattle prong, right? Like that's what happened. So I because, and I think Ty nailed it too. It was because whoever the powers that be never gave him the belt like that, never gave him a long title run like that, never made him the AA plus guy. I'm going to give him a 4.5 on the It Factor charisma, and I feel good about that because he's a two-time Hall of Famer, but he's not those guys. He's not, nobody, and he's a hell of a better talker than Bret Hart, but nobody would say he's Bret Hart, right? So, Ty, take us home. Tell me why I'm crazy.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy. You're insane, man. You're insane. Hey, five. Let me rattle off some names for you, okay?
I like
Let me
it.
rattle off some names for you. Fergal Devitt. Matt and Nick Jackson. Cody Rhodes. Cody Hall. I mean, that's obvious. The entirety of the fucking Bullet Club. Without Scott Hall, these people and their mannerisms would not exist. Cody Rhodes would not call the Intercontinental title his absolute favorite title without Razor Ramon.
Facts.
He oozes. You would not have the sting that you have right now. You would still have Hollywood surfer sting for the rest of your lives without Scott Hall. Who was the one that said, "Have you ever seen The Crow? You should watch that." like 5. If you would take charisma and concentrate it, you would call it Scott Hall. All right. Like, he didn't have to do anything. Yes, he wasn't those guys, but he never got lost with those guys. Whenever you see
he
him
definitely
with
held
Ric
his own.
Flair,
He definitely held his own.
when he was teaming up with Ric Flair,
Yep.
You didn't say he doesn't belong there. He always belonged. He didn't need that title for him to belong there.
No. I want to add one more thing in here. It just came to my mind.
Hit it, Mo.
If you really think about how much charisma this guy has, look at the world of hip hop, right? Look if you realize how many people in hip hop said something, how much Razor Ramon was their favorite wrestler, right? Mm-hmm. You look about the charisma, the gold chains, the flashiness, the smoothness, like that's part of hip hop culture too, and how it blends in with one another. Like that goes to show how much his character, his aura, everything, his presentation, how it burned a lasting memory in all of these people's lives. And you look at, like I said, you look at all these musicians and what they're saying, and mostly within the hip hop world, they love that. I'm
gonna find the quote, the tweet that was sent out after his passing by West Side Gun, Griselda's own and huge wrestling fan. And it was, "Scott Hall, I love you, brother. I'm named after this man, Hall. My style, the chains, the Ayo, everything is this man. I didn't want to be Jordan. I wanted to be Scott. So thankful he became a friend and knew how much I loved him. I'm truly heartbroken right now." That is from one of the toughest rappers in the game right now, was one of the most connected to the streets persona, stable. It was, he didn't want to be Jordan, he wanted to be Scott.
Maybe he's a 5.
So let's to recap. Mic work is a 5. In-ring work is a 4. Charisma is a 5. He's a Hall of Famer 2 times over. He's gonna round out to our highest score that we've ever had. Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. We got a break right now, really quickly. This is Wrestling Chat with Friends on the Family Podcast Network. Please make sure you visit thefamilypn.com, subscribe. Not only this show, I did the count today. I think we're up to 13 shows, and we have more gaining. There's a lot going on with the family, so check it out, please. Ty, Mo, I know you guys are going to be checking out in a second.
Yep.
We still have a couple things to talk about when it comes to the life and the legacy of Scott Hall. The finisher we have to talk about. And then we'll talk about, a little bit of, we don't want to bring the show down, but we do want to talk a little bit about the challenges he faced publicly, the way that he battled publicly, and the way that he kind of, in this kind of new iteration of what wrestling has become, a handful of folks kind of let it all be out there, warts and all, and he's one of those people. So, again, like I said, I know you guys got to go. Scott, tell me, Ty, hit me with the Razor's Edge, and tell me what you thought or what you think of that finisher. It's an interesting one because it's not one that a lot of folks have tried to reinvent and steal and use to this day.
I mean, there's a reason why, and there's a reason why for that. It's a very, very dangerous move. And people trusted him enough. Trusted his ability to keep them safe and using that finisher. He never had any other finisher, really.
No.
It was always the Razor's / Outsider's Edge. So that should tell you enough about that. I mean, the Celtic Cross, what Sheamus was doing, the Eagle's Edge that what's his face does, nah. Razor, for somehow he could drop you on your neck like that, and keep you safe. So that's what I have, and with that I gotta head out. But
all right, brother.
Not even the sidetrack. I will say this one thing. Y'all keep on talking about the Razor's Edge match of the week that y'all gotta watch before I go, because I gotta do it.
Got to do it.
Scott Hall, Ric Flair versus Mr. Perfect and Macho Man.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
Boom.
That is Survival Series 1992.
Yep.
Survival Series 1992. Got to check it out. Brother, appreciate you as always. Wish it was better circumstances for your triumphant return, but we really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the bad guy, Ty. Love you, brother. Really quick, gentlemen, as we finish this out, let's talk. Let's talk. Why do you think? Because here's the thing about that finisher. There's also, I like Ty said, I think there's a lot of trust involved, but I also don't think a lot of people can pull that off. You have to have a lot of size, a lot of strength, and it's not something where you're gonna see, an Adam Cole or even, somebody smaller instead. You're not going to see even a Matt Hardy. Or, you know what I mean? You've got to be a very large man with a lot of strength to do that Razor's Edge. Well, what was your thoughts on that move? Because I had never seen anything like it until it was done.
Well, for me, it took this conversation for me to sort of remember how kind of cool that move was. I was lucky enough to see it in person a few times, but thinking about it, you're right. Like I said, it wasn't until this conversation I had focused just so much more on his personality than his finisher. But yeah, that Razor's Edge, just like Ty said, it took an incredible amount of trust. You never really heard about anyone being injured by it. Um, it just speaks to kind of his character as a wrestler. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely right up there. It's not the most iconic move, but it got. I mean, it's. I'm just sort of envisioning it right now. It's a really cool, effective finisher,
It's a
and just
cool, effective
bring,
finish.
bringing bringing someone down, straight over. And they
My
just
only
really,
thing was I didn't know. My only knock on the Razor's Edge, which I think is one of the coolest finishers, was I just didn't know if it hurt as much. It didn't look like it hurt that bad, right?
yeah, lots of finishers don't look like they hurt that bad, So yeah,
Mo, what'd you think about the Razor's Edge?
I thought it was a beautiful finisher. I mean,
It's a good word.
it was one of those things that you looked at it, you never really saw anything like that before. It was one of those things that, like you said, you never really heard any stories about anybody getting injured from the Razor's Edge. He protected the wrestler with that with that finisher. I'm trying to think. It was just one of those things that at that time period, you just didn't see a big guy like that doing that. Like it was, and even afterwards, like I said, and Ty had pointed out, there's not many wrestlers that try to, mimic or do that move as their finisher, and it's probably more, the reason is because it's so people respect that finisher as Scott Hall's finisher, Razor Ramon's finisher.
Mhm.
That goes to show how much people in the industry, respected that move. That like not everybody could pull that off because it's not so much more of the impact of the move. It's just the sheer look of it, the image of it.
I don't think there's a finisher that fits a character better,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
You have to be the
Razor
right side.
Edge finish. No, I mean, but he just the like you said, it's a beautiful finisher, but it's also very cool, and it fit Razor Ramon. It fit Scott Hall. It fit the persona and the character perfectly, and I think it was just a perfect marriage between a wrestler and the finishing move that he did. And it again it needs its greatness. The thing when you talk about greatness in professional wrestling, these things have to add up.
Yeah,
These things have to have this synergy and this merger. And I don't know what comes first. I don't know if it's the Scorpion Deathlock or the Scorpion Deathlock and Sting, but we know they go together. We
yeah,
know the Figure Four, Ric Flair. We know it goes together, and we know that the Razor's Edge and Razor Ramon and it's just perfect. It was a perfect marriage, and he had a perfect complement of what he did well. And again, that's what I think. That's another reason why people don't do it, because it just doesn't fit, right?
no,
It has to fit. Gentlemen, before we get you out of here, this has been a lot of fun. We're gonna give you a quick opportunity to reflect on the overall kind of legacy and impact of Scott Hall, and what it means. And I'll just say as well, because like I said, this is obviously lifting up one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Um, I do think the end, as complicated and tragic, and a lot of the challenges that Scott Hall was able to show the public, um, actually, in many ways, helped humanize professional wrestling, helped humanize the industry, let people know that everybody isn't Superman, and they all have their own demons and struggles. And a lot of us in wrestling, we kind of knew this. We knew that there are a lot of people going through things. But Scott Hall was one of the, more so than some of the others that went through struggle, because he always seemed to have this cadre of community members that wanted him to do well.
yeah,
You always saw Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash and Triple H and X Pac. You always saw them all really wanting him to do well. And, he battled a lot of demons. And so when I think of, the life and legacy and the wrestler of Scott Hall, I'm going to think about all the things that we talked about. But one of the things that I do think I'd be remiss if I didn't say was how much he actually showed us what that life can also do to folks. And he wasn't the type of person, because when it goes really bad, like really really bad, they try to sweep it under the rug. They try just to try to never mention that person's name.
Right.
They try to never. And with Scott Hall, they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. Um, and I don't know, I guess they didn't want to do it, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't just excommunicate Scott Hall. He had too much love, and he had too many people around him, and I think everybody really wanted him to win. And I'll think of that too, as I think of the life and legacy of all the good stuff and all the awesomeness. I'll think of the human aspect of Scott Hall, a lot like we think about. We've been doing a lot. Me personally, I've been doing a lot of Muhammad Ali stuff recently, and a lot of Muhammad Ali research. And there's this interesting thing about Ali where he turned from the most hated man in America to the most loved man in America. And in order for him to do that, he had to become human. He wasn't the Ali that was boisterous and telling people he was going to knock him out and telling everybody that he's the prettiest. It was the 1996, Parkinson's, I'm struggling to light the torch Ali, that the world finally was like, oh no, that's one of the greatest human beings of the 20th century.
Right.
And I think the interesting thing with Scott Hall is, had it not been for that, the ending couple of years per se, I don't think we would be having the same conversation, because now everybody loves the bad guy. But at the time, he could have moved into a different stratosphere. Mo, I'll give you. I'll switch to you, and then we'll give Elliot the last word, and we'll get out of here.
All right. Man, like it's just the fact that he just was one of those type of people that you when you watch wrestling, especially as a kid, you don't you have that, you still have that innocence there, with watching it. And you don't think about all this outside stuff and whatever. You just watch it just simply for what is being presented on the television. And wrestlers, as we know, are larger than life figures. And these are the type, Scott Hall, Razor Ramones, like those are the guys that you keep in your mind. And they stay alive in your memory, as long as you live. And his character is just one of those characters that, man, like there's no way it could ever leave your mind. There's no way at all. And just the overall presentation, and kudos and kudos to Vince and the people that, I guess, writers, at that time, that to even come up with the idea of him being this Cuban guy and with all the chains and the floral shirts and all, like, I mean, whoever thought of that like that's going to be his gimmick. You know what? Like that person, kudos to them, because who would have thought that? And we know he wasn't Cuban, but it's just it was something different, and he just had a lot of memorable moments, in history of wrestling, and the matches, the image of him on the ladder in WrestleMania 10, with both the IC belts. That's an image. Watch any type of WrestleMania or history of WWF thing, and I could guarantee you Razor Ramon at one point is being shown on there, and it's probably that image of him on that ladder in WrestleMania 10 holding those two belts. The fact that before the match, the whole superstitious thing, you don't walk under the ladder. What did he do? He walked under the ladder. Like everything that was so taboo, you're not supposed to do, he did it on screen.
And made it look cool.
Right. And you wanted to do that. That's just the beauty of it, just him, and the fact that he was able to pull it off with relative ease. Like that's what made it even better. It looked so easy to him, And it is so cool. It's like, well, let me give it a try and do it. And even to this day, it's funny. The other day I was at work and the door, I was walked through the door. Is one of those doors that you have to swipe your badge, but I don't know, you're probably not supposed to do this, but you walk through the door and I didn't want to touch the handle again. So I literally had to squeeze the little bit of opening that was there to the door. But when I did that, I just did the Razor Ramon walk down the aisle just to get around it so that I wouldn't get, so the door wouldn't hit me on the way out. Like, it's just those little things like that. Like, it just stays with you, and at least with me. And so it's the character, and then the toothpick throw.
The
That
toothpick
was, for
throw
me,
is
that was
legendary.
that was the nail on the coffin right there. The
That might
toothpick
be
throw.
worth. Look, that might be worth a 5 when we talk about it.
Yeah,
Already.
yeah, man. Like,
Hey.
come on, that's how disrespectful. Somebody throw a toothpick at you.
Hey, we're bringing in. Look, we're bringing in your podcast partner, Chris Mack, has joined
See,
as we wrap this up. Chris, we're gonna go to you right now just to give just some quick thoughts on the life, the legacy overall of Razor Ramon. We're gonna bring it back to Elliot to bring us home, and then we're gonna wrap this episode. We're coming up just a little bit over our hour time. Chris, welcome to WCWF. What are your thoughts on Scott Hall?
Thanks for having me here, Cheeks, and it's nice to hear Mo go on one of his best soliloquies around.
Love it,
as he
love it.
always
We
does.
can't have no words barred. Make sure you check it out.
Yeah. Scott Hall really was a pivotal figure in my childhood. I came up at a time that I really known him mainly from his NWO days. After Razor Ramon, but I've managed to like go back in time to check some of his earlier stuff, and man, he was, like he said, he was one of the coolest dudes around. Like, he made Bad look cool. Him and Kevin Nash combined as the outsiders, and he was just always an interesting figure to watch. I was very fortunate to actually speak with him during WrestleMania weekend in 2014. It was just a short conversation, but he was definitely in good spirits at this time. As he was recovering from from his time battling with addiction and going into DDP yoga, and I was managed to able to like just to converse with him and congratulate him on his selection into the WWE Hall of Fame at the time. It was just cool just to be able to get that moment with him, and it's just rough knowing that that we could never really be prepared to see people that we grew up with move on into the other realm of the world. And and for him, he was just a special kind of dude. Like, he was about his business.
Definitely was.
For real.
I think and paved
and
the way. Paved the way. For
paved the way.
generation.
Like,
yeah.
he was a pioneer in many aspects. And the dude was very given too. Like, it's for the business, being able to put over Sean Waltman, as the 1, 2, 3 kid. And then later on, what I found out, he did the same thing for a young Hiroshi Tanahashi when he was doing one of his last stints in New Japan. And, just to see that he was still able to do that and be a consummate professional, and at the same time, focus more about, making money as opposed to, trying to be the best worker in the business or be the main event guy. He was about getting his bread and doing his thing. And at this time, in this industry, that we kind of need more guys like that are focused on building something for their family and for future generations, and to be more about their job.
That's interesting.
And to work and while working on their craft, but it's all about having a better business mind that goes along with it as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. It leads me to think, if there was a Scott Hall type today, who would it be? That, like you said, that doesn't need the spotlight, because we're in a different age in 2022. You don't get a push right away. You're asking for releases. You're not like riding that wave of being just above the mid card, just below the main event. And Scott Hall basically lived there, right? So, no, Chris Mack, man, thank you so much for jumping on. No words barred. I can't talk about them enough. Excited about what you and Mo are doing as a team. More episodes to come. Definitely on the Family Podcast Network. Elliot, man, as you reflect, man, and you think about how we're going to bring this thing home, what are your final thoughts on Scott Hall, the bad guy?
Scott Hall is the one wrestler that he is most connected with. I think everyone would say is Kevin Nash. Best friends in real life, as far as we could all tell, and his tag team partner in life, as well as probably in the ring. However, the reason we still revere Scott. Well, a reason we still we look at Scott Hall the way we do today. In many ways, is because of Diamond Dallas Page. Now, I don't want to give DDP. I'm not here to promote DDP too much because he's kind of a polarizing figure. I think DDP is actually kind of like the Gene Simmons of professional wrestling, like the way he markets himself, for good and for bad. But, you know, I, if 10 years ago, 10 to 11 years ago, we were expecting to have this podcast topic any day now because he had given up. He had checked out. The wrestling world, I think, if you really kind of remember, had sort of forgotten him. WWE had swept him under the rug. He was not mentioned. If you remember some of those times where he knows kind of right before DDP maybe got involved, he no-showed some independent promotions. There's some YouTube videos of him appearing when he had no business being out there. He did some things that he would say now, when he had some sober moments, he'd reflect on it and say, I shouldn't have been out there. I think he did do a fair amount of, reflecting, but the business in him had broken up and we were all waiting for him just to hear about the news. Scott Hall, like most wrestlers at some point they're found, unfortunately found dead in a hotel in Florida. Like that was inevitably going to happen. DDP, however he got involved with him, I think Scott Hall would say DDP may have contributed to saving his life. But what DDP did was help Scott get enough clarity where we could then see Scott for who he was. And that, so credit to DDP, but really that's credit to Scott Hall. A couple of those documentaries when his son was breaking into the business and he was helping him, I think that humanized him quite a bit. He did become the first sort of redemption story in wrestling, in sort of like the outside wrestling business, like in YouTube, and I just remember the redemption. He was done. He had really ruined his chances with WWE because they couldn't take the risk of having him in a Hall of Fame until he was completely clean. And he got really clean and then he got really sick. And that's just a byproduct of being unhealthy for so long. And I'm, in some ways, I'm relieved we didn't have to have this podcast any sooner than it happened. Because there was, if you were making a celebrity death list anytime in the last 15 years, you're putting Scott Hall on it in those worst times. So I'm glad we got a good decade plus of sober, reflective Scott Hall who, made us remember the bad guy and not the guy he was at risk of becoming remembered for.
That is very, very well said, very on point, and actually very, very true and accurate. Elliot, thank you so much. Chris, Mo, thank you so much. Justin, Ty, thank you guys. Everybody that contributed. The wrestling world's hurt. The wrestling world's hurt. Missing a big piece, making a big piece, and as we continue on, I think that legacy of Scott Hall will only grow. And I think, Elliot, you hit it right on the head. That's a good thing. And the good part of this story is that it's a tragic story now, but as we continue to go forward, we'll remember much more of what we're supposed to be remembering, and it won't be as it would have been if it was 5 years ago or 8 years ago. It's a much different story today, and that's to a credit of a lot of folks, including the bad guy himself. So until next time, this is a special edition of Wrestling Chat with Friends. We wouldn't have it any other way. But we'll get back down to the business of the wrestling week next Thursday at 8 p.m. As always, I'd be remiss if I don't shout out our normal host, Megan, your favorite heel and heels. Had a family emergency tonight, so she couldn't come on, but she gives everyone her love, and we're going to count it out as Megan would on the count of 3. So 1, 2, 3, and to Scott Hall, as always. Till next time.